This is a new form of content I'm making, so bear with me if the formula changes over time. It's tricky to try to pin down the best formula between education and entertainment. I've just been wanting to make videos like this for a while because I don't see enough of it out there. So I thought I'd start with this series, What Constitutionalists Actually Believe. And yes, I'm kind of copying Freedom's Toon's idea for his animated series, What Libertarians Actually Believe, but that's pretty much as far as I'm copying him. So first off, what is a constitutionalist? I think in America we struggle with this because we kind of have the oldest lasting, still relevant constitutions in this country on the state and federal level. So a constitutionalist or a conservative in America may be entirely different than a constitutionalist and a conservative in Europe or Asia. I am making this series from the perspective as a member of the Constitution Party, a party I joined in 2016 because I swore I would leave the Republican Party if Donald Trump won the primaries. And as we all know, he did. Now, that isn't to say I have sworn my allegiance to the Constitution Party the same way I didn't swear my allegiance to the Republican Party. And that is also not to say that I oppose every single thing Donald Trump has said, but there are some key differences between the current Republican Party and the Constitution Party, especially when it comes to this issue of the presidential nominee. So let's just say, for the basis of this video, a constitutionalist is someone who believes in the Constitution, but it's more than just believing in upholding any interpretation of the Constitution, because there are a few different theories on how the Constitution should be read and interpreted in modern day. So the Constitution Party, I think anyone who's being truthful with themselves as a constitutionalist, interprets the Constitution based on the original intent of how it was written. So like the Second Amendment says a well-regulated militia, and a lot of modern people would read that and say, oh, the militia needs to be heavily regulated. But in the context of when it was written, regulated was meant to mean well-trained or well-kept, not regulated as in restricted from the type of arms that may be used. This is something that Joe Biden seems to repeatedly get wrong.
You couldn't buy a cannon when this amendment was passed.
When talking about the Second Amendment, he also reiterates this argument that cannons were illegal when the Second Amendment was written, even though we have documents of the Founding Fathers explicitly promoting the use of cannons on private ships. Like, you can just go out and buy a cannon, and you can still just go out and buy a cannon. Cannons are completely unregulated. You can just get a cannon. And for the most part, the reason that still is because the Second Amendment is very clear that individuals have just as much right to bear arms as people who were voted into power or people who serve in the military. So a constitutionalist believes in a historical interpretation of the Constitution. Another thing about constitutionalists in America is that we support the American Revolution and the ideals that brought forth the American Revolution. This, I think, is really brought out by Thomas Jefferson, John Dickinson, and John Adams, that basically our rights don't come from the government. Our rights are inherent to us. They're blatant when you just look at the laws of nature, and that is super important if you believe nature was created with a purpose. So constitutionalists are typically Christian or religious in some manner because it's hard to have an American Revolution without religious motivation. And when I use the term religious, I mean a belief in God or divine providence, not necessarily a church structure or whatever religious structure one might be a part of. Obviously, the topic of religion is a whole nother video to cover, but just know that most constitutionalists are conservative and religious not because they're constitutionalists, but because conservatism and Christian faith leads to a love for your neighbors and a love for your country. And if you love the people around you, you want what's best for them, and Most constitutionalists believe the Constitution is what's best for everyone. It was a main principle of the American Revolution that government shouldn't be established just to benefit a specific class of people. And while liberals like to remind us tons of examples where that wasn't always the case, that's a principle of the American Revolution, and because of that, we've gotten to where we are today. These debates have been going on since the founding of our country because we are always battling to make things better for the next generation. I think that's another reason why it's hard to define these political identities we give ourselves, especially in America, because a conservative in America might be a revolutionary because our country was founded on the American Revolution. So if you're trying to conserve that time period, you're kind of a revolutionary. That could be seen as completely insane in some European countries because you'd be anti-monarchy and anti-state established religion and these traditions that date back hundreds of years. But at least a constitutionalist in America can pinpoint to the time they're trying to conserve, which is the Constitution and the principles of the Constitution. Now, a constitutionalist also needs to support the rule of law, which basically means we all are governed by consistent laws that do not contradict the laws of God or nature, and that truly includes everyone from the members of Congress and the judicial branch and the executive branch to the employee at Walmart. When we're not ruled by laws, we wind up being ruled by the whims of either a single individual, a small group of individuals, or just whichever mob manages to club the most people into submission. So constitutionalists strive to be consistent and principled in, well, everything that they do, but especially in regards to politics. That was something that I feared with Donald Trump and some of the direction of the Republican Party, is that if you throw out the Constitution, there will be nothing restricting your opponents when they become in charge. So like Donald Trump passed executive orders regulating firearms, executive orders attempting to bring down the cost of medicine, and so forth, and then Joe Biden can just come in and rule all that null. And these aren't things that a president really should be doing. We're becoming an electoral dictatorship or monarchy when our executive can just keep making up rulings that affect our lives. The president really should only be answering to Congress. He shouldn't be making up laws or getting us involved in military conflicts when Congress hasn't even declared war. And this has been a problem forever, but it's definitely increased in my lifetime. And now we see Joe Biden doing the exact same things, trying to ban AR pistols by heavily regulating pistol braces and coming up with a ton of other arbitrary regulations. And these actions are illegal because they're unconstitutional. Anything that goes against the Constitution, which is the supreme law of the land, is illegal. And so long as we keep electing politicians who are completely fine with that, we're governed by the whims of politicians and not by the Constitution. Because of this grounded doctrine within constitutionalist thinking, they never really sway on social issues or what the government should be regulating, because the government should only be involved in the things that it's permitted to be involved in per the Constitution. This is my only real problem with the Libertarian Party and pure libertarian thinking, is there's no real line that you can draw. Like, is a libertarian an anarchist? Well, I guess an anarchist could be considered a libertarian. Is a right-wing capitalist a libertarian? If Ron Paul's a libertarian, then yes. Can a constitutionalist be a libertarian? Probably. I think constitutionalists wind up being more libertarian than most libertarians because they inherently have a reason for what they're doing. Libertarians are always fighting with each other, and I know because I'm involved with a lot of them, because none of them can really agree on what libertarianism is. And I've just come up with the definition that it's more of a direction than anything, whereas a constitutionalist is more specific, and that also leads to a harder time getting people to join the party, because it's easy to get people to join the Republican or Democrat or even Libertarian Party, because join the Libertarian Party, all you gotta do is say, do you believe in freedom? Well, join us. All of them try to say that, though. Currently, the Republicans are just hopping on the bandwagon of immigration. Like, do you not like all these people pouring over the border? Join us. Constitutionalists have to be like, do you understand your own country's history, do you really understand what freedom means? How do you intend on preserving that freedom for longer than 50 years? And for that reason, I would love to see a constitutionalist one day on the national debate stage, because I don't think people really understand what it would be like to see someone who knows the law debating on a national stage.
Your decision doesn't apply in Texas because you have no authority to make it. You do not make law, so we will not obey you.
We vaguely saw that in the 2016 primaries.
The Fourth Amendment was what we fought the revolution over. John Adams said it was the spark that led to our war for independence.
But when I was watching the Libertarian debates in the 2016 primaries, every time Austin Peterson was asked a question, he knew the Constitution, and he always explained how he would react as president as per the Constitution.
The president has no constitutional authority to regulate drugs. That being said, at the state level, I would support some legislation that would stop children from being allowed to purchase drugs.
I don't think anyone who has run for president since then could do that. And that means they are easily manipulated by their advisors as well as everyone around them, because they don't even know what the position means and when they should not react to something. And no one in the Republican or Democratic Party is willing to actually say, no, you can't do that, because that means whenever they're in charge, they won't be able to do it. And because these things get so specific, the Constitutionalist Party specifically winds up in a small box off in the corner, where I think most people, if explained the principles of the Constitution Party correctly, would at least sympathize with their cause. But the cause of the Constitution is never publicized.
You know, some Republicans out there have been saying that Ron Paul would be very dangerous.
Well, I think it would be even more dangerous to start nitpicking wars with other countries. Someone like Iran, Israel is more than capable of.
All right, we just lost our connection, unfortunately.
It's boring to say that the answers to our modern crises are easily detected in our history books, or at least a history book that's worth anything. But the Constitution Party and anyone who's running as a constitutionalist, whether in or outside of the party or in another party, really is someone who understands what the American Revolution actually means, who wants to restrict the federal government so it isn't involved in every aspect of your life, and who's conservative of the things that have value, libertarians on the things regarding freedom, and maybe even a little liberal when you consider the things of the old world. If that even seems vaguely interesting to you, then I'd encourage you to look more into what American constitutionalists and conservatives have written and talked about for years, and to subscribe for future videos where I talk about the specific issues that constitutionalists would tackle. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video.